It's all about humanity.
And we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are tuning in from around the world. I am 1 minute early. Why? I respect Robert's time. So we are go. So if you've got anybody out there that comes and joins us, do tell them that we are live. I am Brian, the UKBitcoinMaster. This is your Bullish Bitcoin channel live interview. Today is the 1st of December 2022. You know the name of the game on this show. Build that strong Bitcoin hand. It's all right to say I've got a strong hand, but have you really got a strong hand? When the going gets tough, are you one of the tough that gets going, or do you cop out? So this show is all about helping you understand why Bitcoin, why not shitcoins. And it's easy for someone to say that, but I know, but you have got to know why Bitcoin. And that is why I do these shows. That is why I get the guests that I do on the shows. So please share this out on Twitter right now and let people know that I am live with Robert Breedlove. I would appreciate it. Pick up the link for the show, share it out as well, and let's get as many eyeballs on this as we can. If you are finding my channel for the very first time, please read the disclaimer below, because you're not going to get any type of charts, TA, financial advice, or anything here. Secondly, check out UKBitcoinMaster.com. Close to 500 videos over there. Bitcoin interviews, where you'll find, I think, over 70 interviews that I've done to date with what I believe to be some of the greatest minds in Bitcoin currently, including the one that's coming up now that I'm already putting in the category of one of the greatest minds, in my opinion. So do check out those websites. And last but not least, you saw it in the countdown, but I'm going to do it once more. Not your keys, not your coins. With everything that's gone on over the last few weeks and the last 3 or 4 months, if you have got any Bitcoin on exchanges, there is probably no helping you. All I can do is keep saying, get it off of exchanges, people, if you value your coins. Okay, very quickly before I bring Robert in, let me go over to the desktop. If you want to drop me a tip, there's a couple of Sats addresses. Like I've said before, and I'll say it again, I don't run this show for any type of financial gain. I haven't monetized it, but people have said, how can we drop you a tip for the work you do? Well, there are 3 Sats addresses there. And if you want to keep hold of your Bitcoin, what about supporting me by buying me a cup of coffee, so to speak? So there you go. Right, that is it. I want to bring in my guest. I am absolutely pumped to hell about this. So without further ado, I want to welcome Robert Breedlove to my show. Robert, great to have you in the house.
It is great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolute honor. It really is. And, you know, we were just talking off air. You know, I've been in Bitcoin heading almost 6 years now. And, you know, I've learned so much over my time in Bitcoin. But of course, you know, there's so much more to learn. I try to keep up. I am a boomer, but I listen to some of the talks that you give. And, you know, they are out there, Robert. I don't know how else to say it. They are, to me, I'm only talking about me. I'm going to say this so you've got an idea. I left school at 15, 0 qualifications, 20 odd years of my life. I drove trucks for a living. So, you know, I didn't have a background in finance, in law, in money, nothing. So when I came to Bitcoin, it was just a crazy phone call from a friend asking me what I knew about it. And I said, absolutely nothing at all. What the hell is it? That was where I was at in May 2017. So what I've done over 6 years is just try to get in that rabbit hole, Robert, and learn as much as I can about it. And the reason I've got you on is because I say to my audience, what credibility have I got to talk to people about why they should buy Bitcoin? So I run my shows every Monday and every Thursday, but what I like to do is bring a guest on the show or run a short video clip and talk about it when I haven't got a guest, to help my audience to see that it's not just me, the crazy Brit, who is ranting about why people should get off of zero. So I guess where we'll start, if it's okay with you, I'd really maybe like you to tell my audience a little bit about you and, what you were up to before you discovered Bitcoin, maybe when you discovered it, and the journey, really, Robert. I think we can fill an hour with that, and then we're done. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, what were you up to before Bitcoin then?
Yeah, I'll keep it really brief because I've shared it on other shows. But my background is in accounting and finance.
Okay.
Master's degree in accounting and finance. I worked at an accounting firm in the United States, Tennessee, in the United States,
Okay.
for a number of years, and then I was pretty much a career. I got out of accounting and went into private industry, and I was basically a career CFO, mostly focused in technology. And then I started working for myself in late 2016, early 2017. And initially, I was just CFO consulting. I didn't really know what I was going to be doing, but it was that decision to go and work for myself that gave me the time to start studying crypto, really, at the time, which at the time it was crypto, right? I didn't know
The difference.
didn't know.
Yeah.
So having gotten into crypto, I learned a lot about really what these technologies are, and I started to have this fundamental kind of look back into the history of money.
Okay.
I had this is before Bitcoin, actually. And I've told this story before, so stop me if you've heard it, but I had found the book The Creature from Jekyll Island back in 2005.
Oof.
And so I'd already come to this conclusion that central banking was like the big problem in the world. And I didn't know what to do about it at the time when I had discovered the book. It didn't seem like there was a viable solution to central banking. So I kind of just, I sat with the idea for a while. I shared it with others. And then I eventually just kind of put it on an intellectual shelf for myself and moved on with life. And it wasn't until I started working for myself, like I said, in 16, 17, that I had this leisure time. I'd liberated some time and attention for myself. And that is where, funny enough, I was Ethereum advertising the idea of smart contracts. I don't recall exactly where I heard it first, but it was definitely through Ethereum. And then I was like, what the hell is a smart contract? So I started researching that. And then I got into Nick Szabo's work on smart contracts, which was written in the 90s. And basically that was it. That was my tumble into crypto. I was like, oh, smart contracts are going to be a really big deal. I started making allocations into the space. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just buying kind of the top market cap weighted crypto assets, thinking that these things had some utility in terms of this smart contract value proposition. And that, what I always say here is where my money went, my mind followed. And I started studying the assets that I owned. And that was the gateway for me going into the rabbit hole of Bitcoin itself. And I think the further you go down that rabbit hole, the more narrowly focused on Bitcoin alone you become. And that's pretty much been my path. And then when I was that got me into Bitcoin. I ended up running a hedge fund in the space for a while. I was writing investor updates. I was also writing these long form research pieces. And the writing had become popular through my Twitter following. And then I was getting invited onto podcasts to talk about what I had written. And the podcast appearances became popular. And so the feedback I was getting from the market was more writing, more talking. And I, in November 2020, decided I would jump on the podcast bandwagon by launching the What is Money show. And at that time, it was just an idea. I just wanted to, inspired by Jordan Peterson to some extent here, where he had described how YouTube and podcasting had basically taken the bandwidth cost down to zero. So whereas in the 20th century top-down media model, you had very compressed airtime. People had 2 to 5 minutes to try to give their whole spiel. Well, now in the digital age with podcasting, we have the opposite. We have unlimited airtime effectively. It's near zero cost to do what we're doing right now. And my philosophy on that was like, well, great. We have this vast space to talk about big ideas. So let's give the ideas the room they need to breathe. And so my pitch to Saylor was like, look, I want to have people on the show to just talk about this question, this seemingly enigmatic question: what is money? Kind of mysterious, kind of simple, but has a lot of answers, hard to pin down. And the differentiation on the show is going to be, we'll just talk about it as long as we need to talk about it. You know,
It was about 10 hours, wasn't it?
Well, it ended up being, I think Saylor and I have 17 episodes together at around 25 hours of content.
Oh, have I not?
So yeah, it's a very, and that series, which, you know, I take very little credit for because Michael Saylor is probably one of the most eloquent people on the planet, incredibly compelling speaker. And that series was just a catapult for the show. I've been approached by, I guess, thousands of people at this point.
Yep.
Describing how that series, the Saylor series, was their introduction into the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And
Wow.
as you know, this is a one-way street, right? Once people get into this, it's like getting unplugged from the matrix. You never look back.
No, you don't. So would you say that you know, the Saylor thing sort of kicked the whole thing off then? I mean, when you just, obviously you were in crypto, and then, you know, you started going down the rabbit hole. You obviously read Creature from Jekyll Island. I mean, that for me, that was a really heavy book, but boy, what an eye opener! It just absolutely screwed on my head reading that book. It really did. It made me question everything, as you rightly say. It makes you, you know, question the whole narrative, and it was just mind blowing for me. But was there a person or a bit of material that was maybe a catalyst for, whoa, this is Bitcoin, or was it just a gentle, you know, progression as you walk through, you know, your time in the space?
I was fortunate to have purchased the Bitcoin Standard, I think the day or the day after it came out. This was like April 2018.
Yeah, me too.
April 2018? Yeah, 2018, pretty sure. And I read it in a weekend. Like, I read it in 2 days. So I read it basically the day, you know, the weekend it came out, pretty much.
Yeah.
I had read it by 3 days after its release, let's say. And that was probably the final piece for me, that I knew the corruption of money was a systemic, macro historical, recurrent self-deception. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm throwing a lot of big words out. We're going to keep it simple today.
No, you're okay with all that.
Human beings are addicted to the printing of money, was
Yep.
kind of my conclusion. Like, we keep thinking we can print money to solve problems, but it actually creates problems.
Yep.
And so I knew that was a real issue. I didn't know how we would disentangle ourselves from that. That was Creature from Jekyll Island that had sort of incepted that idea within me.
Yep.
And then when I get to the Bitcoin Standard, it was my first look into this unexplored domain for me of Austrian economics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, oh man, people have been talking about the origins of money. Like, it's a rationalistic approach to economics. So this is the proper treatment for a social science. This is a bit of a rabbit hole to go into, but
It's cool.
Empiricism doesn't work in the field of economics because, as Mises said, we don't have constants, right? In natural sciences, water freezes at 0 degrees centigrade, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a constant. That's a
Yep.
time invariant law that you can build a framework around. Well, there are no such constant relationships in the sphere of human action. There is no constancy, basically. So you have to use an entirely different framework of knowledge called rationalism rather than empiricism to explore, to deduce these theorems about human action. So that was a real awakening for me. It's like, oh wow, there are people that have been thinking about this for many hundreds of years. It was, through safety, and obviously got into the work of Mises, Rothbard,
Mm-hmm.
Hayek, Hoppe, Guido Holzmann, hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, all these Austrian that had written about this for many, many decades.
Yep.
And at that point, I would say I pretty much became full on, but just the recognition of this being the only innovation that perhaps will come out of this entire wave of technological change we've called crypto. In the same way that, like, when the internet emerged, there used to be a lot of talk about intranets.
Yep.
Right? Corporations would have their own private internet.
Yep.
Well, that's gone now, right? No one has an intranet. The internet, the open network, devoured all the closed networks. And I view Bitcoin as something somewhat
Gonna do the
analogous.
same.
That you have Bitcoin is the internet of money. It is this open network,
Yep.
universally accessible, transparent. Nothing is concealed, right? It's just openness. No counterparty risk. And then in these crypto assets, you have basically a copy and paste of Bitcoin's code in to develop a closed network, something that's trying to provide a solution in either a different market space or trying to compete directly with Bitcoin as money. And I just don't think that's going to work. I think money really is a winner-take-all market space. You know, when you consider that the value of money is its liquidity, it's how many trading partners, how widely accepted it is in this one definition of money, which again, there's a lot of definitions. I think, I guess in a nutshell, you could say for the same economic reasons, we only have one analog gold. My thesis is that we end up, not my thesis, many Bitcoiners' thesis, the Bitcoin maximalist thesis, is that we end up with only one digital gold. And that everything else is just noise, right? These are all these shit coins are analogous to intranets,
Yep.
and they're going to go the way of the dinosaur. And Dino is actually a good analogy for them because we describe a lot of these. This is the fundamental difference between Bitcoin and shitcoin. Bitcoin is decentralized. All shitcoins are dinos, decentralized in name only.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think there may come a period, I don't know when, maybe 10 years from now, where the same way we look back on intranets today and say, can you believe people ever thought that was going to be a thing? And we laugh about it. Some people haven't even heard about it today. If I bring up the term intranet to someone in their 20s, they don't know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
I think the same sequence of events is going to play out related to Bitcoin, that in maybe 10, 15, 20 years, we'll talk about shitcoins and people will be like, what is that? Never heard of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough to remember, the internet starting out and the squealing when it was trying to load a page and you were waiting for 3 minutes while the little dots went across. And look where we are today. And when the internet came out, and again, I sometimes I can't get this out of what's stored in here, out of here fluently. But what I mean is, we could not envisage the iPhone, all these app stores and everything, on a phone. We've got a computer, we've got our banking, we've got absolutely everything in our pocket these days. That, if I try to explain to people when I'm talking to them about Bitcoin, they are the layers on top of the internet. And Bitcoin will be, when I say will be, it's just my own personal belief, will be the internet of money. It will be the money of the world. It will be the base layer. It will be the bearer asset, whatever you want to call it. And then everything will be built on top of that, just the same as what we had on the internet. Am I right there?
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, the analogy, I don't know that it's really quite factual, actually. If you understand how the internet is constituted, that it is this stack of open source protocols.
Yeah.
Most of us are familiar with HTTP.
Yep.
Most of us have probably heard of TCP/IP. These are all just open for mediating the exchange of data without permission. That's all it is. You can build a website without permission. You can communicate with people without permission. It's this decentralized media paradigm, effectively, that the internet has ushered in. And if you understand that, right? So the internet has evolved organically in layers
Yeah.
that you could almost consider Bitcoin to just be the latest evolutionary layer right on top of it. It's instead of being an open source protocol for mediating the exchange of data, the genius of Satoshi is that he has figured out a way to create one of these internet layers that is actually anchored into reality, anchored into energy, anchored into physical thermodynamic reality, and such that it is capable of mediating the exchange of economic value. So, in the same way, we have the internet that lets us communicate without permission. Obviously, we're talking about the internet as a whole here. We're not talking
Yep.
about an application, like you can get censored off of Twitter or Facebook or whatever. We're talking about the internet as a whole, in the entire protocol stack. Bitcoin sort of just slots in nicely right there on top and says, hey, well, we have permissionless communications. We have this permissionless media paradigm. Well, what's the most important form of media in the world? I would argue it's the medium of exchange
Yep.
that we call money.
Yep.
I think it's the most, clearly it's the most valuable market space in the world. It's a technology that every human being in civilized society has to use. It's a technology that almost every human being in civilized society does not seem to understand.
Mm.
And it's incredible. It's kind of like a fusion, if you will. We have mathematics is one of our universal languages. It's given rise to this incredible technology that we have today. What did Arthur Clarke say? That any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yep.
So all of these magical tools, like we're using one right now, I'm talking to you from across the world on a video call.
Yeah.
All of this is born from that natural organic market process and born from mathematics ultimately. Like math is a universal language. I think money is another, as I've described previously. We all need to use it. We think through it. We communicate through it. We have sayings about it. Don't tell me what you think. Show me what's in your portfolio. Put your money where your mouth is.
Yep.
That assertion was right on the money. There's all these little aspects of our language that sort of betray how universal something like money is. And what has Bitcoin done? Well, it's fused them together. We fused mathematics and money into one network, one tool. And it's fascinating in that we've picked up, you could almost consider it like we've gained all the best advantages that the internet has to offer, kind of like this universal engine for permissionless exchange, right? I
Yep.
can send ideas and information anywhere in the world at the speed of light without asking anybody. And we've combined that with the economic properties of gold, right? Something that is, it's hard to come by. It requires a proof of work. It's difficult to counterfeit. But the problem with gold, obviously, is that it was hard to move, hard to transport, hard to secure. But by, the great word that Saylor has introduced to the world here, by dematerializing gold into the internet of money, you get the and you discard the problems with both worlds. Because the problem with the internet is that when you send information, you're not actually sending it, right? You're just sending copies all over
Yep.
the place.
Yep.
Well, if you just copy money, that doesn't work. It
Nope.
dilutes, it inflates, it fails. The advantage of gold is that you can't double spend it or inflate it or counterfeit it. That's great. The problem with gold is it's hard to move. You can't move it around the world like you can information. And then poof, what do we get? Bitcoin. Can't print it, you can't counterfeit it, rooted in reality, but it's purely dematerialized. It's pure digital information. You can move it at the speed of light. You can carry it in your brain. You can carry it in hardware and software. You can carry it in a circle of trust, any information bearing medium. So it's this it's just a really radical idea. And I think that's why, like with the emergence of the internet, people used to call it the information superhighway, or it's like a library on a keyboard, things like this. We use these strange analogies in an attempt to describe a tool that just does not fit our prior worldview.
Mm.
And that to me indicates how paradigmatic Bitcoin is. Like, it's an entirely new thing. So what do? We can't describe the thing. So we start to analogize it to all these older things that we're familiar with. It's digital gold. It's the internet of money. It's, I go way back and I call it inviolable property, right? We've been talking about inviolable private property since at least the year 1215 when King John signed the Magna Carta. Well, I think Bitcoin is the closest instantiation of that principle that we've ever had.
See, that's mind-blowing. That's just mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. Yeah.
It's crazy. So I guess if I can interject for a minute, it leads me to the question, why don't more clever people get this? It's, let me just talk to you about the conference in, Pacific Bitcoin. I mean, I'm working my way through that right now. And Corey said something really interesting about, the battle that we've got going on right now to get the 10%. Talk around that, what you've just said, and around the fact that, and I've just said, why don't more people see it? And here we are in a battle now because we've got to try. I can't quite quantify that. I said this to you earlier. I can take it in my brain and I can't get it fluently out of my flipping mouth. But you understand what I'm trying to say. Corey said there's a battle going on and we've got to get this adoption. We've got to get this 10%, or did he say 100? No, 10 million Americans, was it?
They want 10 million US Bitcoiners. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we're looking.
And so yeah, that's a great question. So Corey and I, we both had our thinking influenced by Nassim Taleb. I think we've both read his entire set of books, The Inserto. I've read all of them once. I've read a couple of them twice. I think Corey's done the same. And one of the novel concepts that Taleb introduces in his book is called the minority rule.
Yep.
And I think that's what, and I'm not going to get into it, but let's just say that at a certain level of adoption, if the preferences of a minority are strong and the minority is not willing to bend, and let's say the majority has less strong preferences, they're more fluid, they're more tolerant, that you can reach a very low level of adoption and it will flip the whole cohort. So there's a number of examples Taleb gives, but the numbers can be very small. Like if you get to 4% adoption, they give the example of, like, I think Taleb gives this example. There's roughly 4% of people that demand halal meat.
Yeah. That's the UK,
halal,
isn't it?
I think this is in the UK, actually,
yeah.
this example.
Yeah, it is,
right.
yeah.
Only 4% of people actually want it, but the other 96% of people are somewhat indifferent to whether it's halal or not.
Yep.
Well, when you work it out, it's like 96 or 97% of the meat on shelves is halal because the preferences of that minority are strong and they are sufficiently obstinate that they flip the majority. So anyways, you could read about that. It's called the minority rule, but I think that's where Corey's building this idea of recruiting 10 million US Bitcoiners, that if you get Bitcoin into the hands of that many people, that you could develop a similarly obstinate and intransigent minority. This is a group of people that won't change their ways, right? This is, this is the rigidity you see in Bitcoin maximalist even, right? They're just they're single focus, laser focus, not going to change them. That's the type of cohort you want to create. You only need, again, like 4% of a population to flip the whole thing.
And
so
that's not, sorry to interrupt, that's not even a tipping point or anything like that, is it? We talk of tipping point, critical mass. Is there an element of critical mass tipping point in that in that small percentage if
Well,
they
there is.
load
When I
pods?
say flipping, that's what I mean. Is there is some inflection point, and again, like you would think intuitively, like okay, the goal is mass adoption. Your intuition might tell you, okay, well, we need probably like 51% of people
Yeah.
to use this thing to get mass adoption. That's a simple majority, right?
Yep.
But that's not at all correct. Like you actually have to go down this somewhat non-intuitive intellectual path. Like again, study the minority rule. I forget which book. It's either in Black Swan or Anti-Fragile. I think he
Okay.
writes about the minority rule. I could be wrong about that. But you really just need 4%, right? You need 4% of people that really want to hold a thing and they won't let go of it no matter what. And then you can basically induce the less obstinate majority to adopt your path. So, I'm well aligned with Swan. I work on this mission with them. They're a big sponsor on the show. I speak at their events.
Yep.
I've become increasingly persuaded by the Bitcoin, not shitcoin narrative. I initially was much more, everyone do whatever they want. I don't care. I'll see you in the marketplace and bet against you. That's fine. It's Darwinian. But especially over the past year, right? We've had this crypto catastrophe.
I want to say
after
something. I want to say something, Robert. Before you go into that, one of my questions or things I wanted to point you to was what you said at Pacific Bitcoin, and you said, I thought toxic. You were talking about toxic maxes, and then you quickly realised, what the toxic maxes had done and how they'd save people with their life savings and everything else. Talk to the audience a little bit about that because I found that fascinating. You were talking to
Yeah, that's
Brandon
where I'm
about
going. Actually, is the utility of toxicity.
it.
It's not, and maybe this just has to do with different cultures coming together under one umbrella, right? Which is Bitcoin itself. And it has its own emergent culture, but initially, these norms of making fun of people online and calling it, like, it just seemed like it's not something that I would normally participate in. I wouldn't
Yep.
normally go online to try and ad hominem attack someone or call them names. Yet in retrospect, I've seen how effective it's been, right? It's almost like a self-regulatory measurement or mechanism rather, that since crypto is an unregulated space, right? There's a bunch of bullshit going on.
Yep. Yep.
That this cultural dynamic has emerged of toxicity that's actually like calling out the bullshit. So it's like a self-regulating marketplace in a way. And so that I guess I just did not see that initially, and I've become much more attuned to the utility of toxicity over time.
Okay.
And you're asking earlier why people don't get this big idea. It's the proof of work element. Not that proof of work makes it hard to understand, which maybe it does to some extent, but there is a proof of work necessary for people that seek to understand Bitcoin. Like you've got to put in the hours, you've got to do the work. The traditional number floating around is 100 hours of reading or listening or whatever your preferred method of media consumption is. And I think there's a lot of truth to that because, again, this thing has emerged. It's a prolific idea, right? It's emerged from outside most of our worldviews, right? Considering, and this is the namesake of the show, what is money? I think most people, like the vast majority of people, don't know. I would, even putting myself in this category, I'm not going to claim to know what money is. It's actually a very complicated question to answer, has a lot of answers. But it is that process of pursuing answers to that question that has been so enlightening. And I guess when we look out into the world and say, why don't more people get this? Why don't more smart, clever people get this? It's like, well, and I think Saylor made this point at one point, that there's a certain rate at which a really huge idea can permeate society, can permeate the collective consciousness. Because each node in that network, each individual has to do the work.
Yeah.
You have to put in the hours, right? Again, if it's 100 hours per person, how many people have studied Bitcoin for 100 hours in the world? probably as
that's the
many
thing.
Bitcoin maximalists as there are. It's probably a good proxy. I don't think anyone that's studied Bitcoin for 100 hours has not trended towards becoming a maximalist.
Well, Preston said when he was on my show, and he said it so well. He said, learning about Bitcoin for most people is just simply an inconvenience. And therein lies no proof of work, no belief in it, no deep-rooted understanding of where this thing's going.
Inconvenient because they don't understand the why, right? If you live, especially in the Western world, and you can go and open a bank account in a couple of hours, and your property is not getting confiscated, every time a new dictator comes into power or something like that, you take a lot of these things for granted.
Yes.
And this is why I try to focus a lot of my work on that why, right? Really understanding the principles of life, liberty, property, freedom, truth, sovereignty, value, the things that really constitute who we are and what we do.
Yeah.
That it's an attempt to educate people about the more fundamental nature of socioeconomic reality. And it's, again, akin to being unplugged from the matrix, because once you start to see through the money or realize that the money is illusory, then it calls into question all these other facets of reality that you may have taken for granted before, and makes you question what else might be an illusion. And it's important, right? It's important we have these conversations. It's important that we have this decentralized media paradigm. This is propelling shifts in global consciousness and whatnot. However, I don't think that our educational efforts, this explicit educational content, and I say this as a producer of said content and a believer in how important it is, I don't think it can hold a candle to what government actually does in terms of education. Every time a government inflates a fiat currency or seizes property or goes to war or is engulfed in some corruption scandal, like all of this pain that's being produced from these socioeconomic pathologies, right, or problems, the pain that real people feel in their real lives in terms of eating, drinking, sleeping, like cost of living, like people actually feeling the consequences of corrupt money and violable property in the world. That is the most educational force. I always try to distill all of that down into the phrase that pain is information. It's you touch the hot stove. It doesn't matter if your mom told you not to. It doesn't matter if you read about how hot stoves are and how bad it hurts. It's not until you touch it that you actually change your behavior, right? You really absorb the lesson in a tactile, indisputable, inarguable kind of way, like you feel it. And so I think the same is true in the economics domain. It's like we can talk about all the problems of corrupt money and when you violate property, how it creates all of these second order downstream consequences, both, politically, economically, psychologically, sociologically. Like there's all these negative consequences. But, we can talk about that, talk. And it gives people some framework perhaps to understand and interpret the world. But it's
they still got to put their hand on the stove, haven't they?
Not until you live through a currency collapse or you are a victim of eminent domain or some other form of government intervention or oppression that you really, in your bones, understand the value proposition of Bitcoin.
Wow, that's profound enough. But it's so true, isn't it? When you think about it, we in the West take it for granted. I mean, I keep my ear to the ground. I learn what I can. And you hear about Venezuela and all these countries where there are these, I think somebody said $1 billion notes just floating down the gutters because they're totally worthless and they buy nothing. I don't know if that is the correct analogy, and sometimes I think the people around me that my loved ones that I'm trying to say, look, something's broken. You need to sort of wake up and start to get your head around the fact that something's really wrong here and I can't see it going back. And they look at me as like I've gone mad. So, the question that runs all the time is, what is the best way to orange peel somebody? And I don't know who said it. I don't think it was you. It might have been, but they said, meet them where they're at. Who said that
Mm,
recently on a pod? Meet them where they're at, or in other words, come at it from an angle that they can relate to.
yes. Yeah. Well, I agree with this. So the importance of curating your message for your audience, right? You have meeting them where they're at, as you or someone else said, very important. So if we take that idea seriously, then and my experiences and my perspective and the way I speak, the way I think, I can only resonate with certain cohorts of people in the world, right? There's some
Yep,
people that are going to get what I have to say and get some value out of it. Maybe there's some people in the middle. They're like, sort of get it, sort of don't. Maybe they're not interested. There might be a lot of people that aren't interested, don't get it, or don't like what I have to say.
yep, yep,
So if that's true, and we need to curate our message for our audience and meet people where they're at, then what we actually need is an army of educators, right? I can only reach so many people. There are people that you can reach that I can't reach, and vice versa, and so on and so forth as we get further out into the world. So I hope to be one of the leaders in that effort, right? The What is
yep,
Money show. I'm not, we try to do some Bitcoin 101 content by that title, Bitcoin 101. But I tend to stay focused on what I am interested in, which is
yeah,
this deeper rabbit hole content of what are the implications of Bitcoin? What are the implications of inviolable private property? How do we reorganize ourselves in the wake of Satoshi's invention? These are huge question marks. So I love to wrestle with those ideas. And I hope that my hope is that there are people listening that have also been going down the rabbit hole and they're finding my content valuable or useful, and hopefully helping them dive further into that rabbit hole,
yeah,
and then they can take the messages, lessons, whatever that they're gleaning from that, not just my show, but all the sources, all the books they're reading, all the podcasts they're listening to, etc. And then they can assimilate that through their filter, right? And then they can go out and become a new node on this educational network
yep,
and say, hey, here's why Bitcoin matters. Here's how I see it. Here's how I've learned about it. Here's my path. And all of a sudden, by adding another node to this, distributed orange pilling network that we are, you're now you're meeting more people where they're at, because that individual can now resonate with more audience that no one else could.
yep,
Right. So it's this step-by-step incremental educational effort that I think really drives the idea, the proliferation of the idea that is Bitcoin around the world. And, the idea, that's all well and good, all the ideas and all the bright orange future discussion we have. But at the bottom of all of it, in my view, is the big why, right? Why this tool? Why is it important? Who is it serving? How is it serving them? And that is why I try to keep my sights set on human freedom, right? It's just
yep.
giving people this, it's justice, man. Again, these are just words, but they're big words, right? Freedom, justice. What is justice?
Profound words.
Justice, people getting what they deserve. People getting what they deserve. If I could just put justice in that nutshell, what is property, man? Property is keeping what you earn. So is keeping what you earn not getting what you deserve? So then property is justice.
Mm,
And so what do we need in this world? We need justice.
mm.
What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is property that cannot be separated
It's
from its
truth.
owner.
It's truth.
It is justice. It is truth. It is freedom. These are, again, words we're trying to superimpose on this significant, profound invention of Satoshi, right? Where the six blind guys, if you've ever heard this analogy, describing the elephant, right? One guy's touching the tail, describing how the tail is thin, it's got a furry, bushy elephant's leg, it's big like a tree trunk. Another guy is describing his ear, it's flat like a leaf. They're all describing the same thing, but all through their own particular viewpoints.
Mm.
And I feel like that's what we're doing with Bitcoin, right? It's truth, it's justice, it's freedom, it's sovereignty. In reality, we're just these silly apes on a planet that figured out language and hardware and software. And now we invented the ultimate network for cooperation, right? It disincentivizes violence and coercion and incentivizes cooperation. So the profundity of that is very difficult to understate. And I think that is energizing the Bitcoin movement.
Beautiful. I remember a phrase that I used to say a lot years ago. It was from a guy from the States. His name was George Zalaki. And he said, two men behind prison bars. One saw mud, the other one saw stars. What they were looking at was exactly the same, but each of them chose to perceive it differently.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So this is so Robert, this obviously is a Bitcoin show. We're talking some heavy stuff here, but so your take for people that are new or just got into Bitcoin, or the type of people that follow my channel. And it's really interesting. Somebody jumped in my chat on, where are we, Monday. And he put something in the chat, and I went back and I said something to him, and he said, Brian, he said, I come to your show, he said, because I love the people, I love your community. If I want the deep stuff, he said, I just go off to one of the other channels that I follow. And that gave me hope that maybe there is a place for what I do to try and help those, and you said it, these layers of people. You'll come in. I came in and I found Andreas Antonopoulos back in 2017. That was it. And some crazy guy called Adam Meister, BitcoinMaster, and they were the two. And then eventually the space grew, and there was not much more, was there? And then the space grew, and there's just now a plethora of different information at all levels for people to go away and learn about this thing. But again, we're back to, if you don't know why you would do that, the how won't work for you. We discussed this offline. So exactly. I'm looking at the clock. I'm mindful of your time. Let's start to pull it together for my audience from your point of view as to why they should go down that rabbit hole as noobs, as people that are just in, and what they should be looking for and learning about, maybe.
Well, I mean, it's hard. It's difficult to try and be prescriptive about why anyone should do anything, really, but much less study Bitcoin or the history of money. But I guess if I'm in the mode of making advice or giving advice or making suggestions, that just stop and take a brief account of your world, right?
Yes.
Like, consider how many times you have either transacted in money in the past 24 hours, or you've maybe thought through money, right? You're actually considering, like, should I buy this or should I buy that? You're using money as like a tool for cognitive fitness to the world, right? Yep. It's like language in that way. The only reason you and I can fit our minds together is because we're both running this open source software called English, right? I can make sounds out of my face hole and they can go into your ears and backwards and forwards, and we're communicating.
Yep.
Well, that's because we're running the same software package. And so if you think language is important, for instance, well, then the language of value, which is money, I would argue I think it's equally important. I think money and language are of equal importance in the world.
So do I.
In terms of cognitive software that humans use. Now, money obviously is different in that it's rooted in the real world, whereas language is not. We're kind of just making it up as we go. So, but the big why, I mean, we sort of touched on it a minute ago, but I think most humans have this deeper intuition of justice, right? That we want to do good in the world. We want to be seen.
Yep.
We want to add value to the lives of those around us. We also want to add value to ourselves, right? We want to eat. We want to drink. We want to have shelter. We want to wear nice clothes. We want to travel. So if you consider that, what if you take those ideas seriously and you do want to do good in the world and you do want to see justice carried out and you do believe in truth, right? You want your actions and beliefs to be ordered to what is true, not what you're told necessarily.
Yeah.
Then I think you should be really excited to go down this pathway, because that's all we're doing, right? We're just it's just questions. You're like, well, what is this? What is that? How does this work? How do we know? Who's written about it? Who are the counter arguments against this point and that point? And we're kind of like crowdsourcing the truth in a way, establishing consensus on what actually works for individuals freely acting in the marketplace versus what is forced upon those individuals, right? Now, people get twisted on this occasionally because they think, well, I'm not forced to use dollars, right? I can sell all my dollars for gold or whatever it may be. But as a practical matter, if you don't have, at least in the US, a US dollar bank account.
Yeah.
And again, myself included, I have a US dollar bank account.
Yeah.
I also think the US dollar is the biggest pyramid scheme in the world.
Yep.
So I am participating in and complicit with this pyramid scheme. I'm not calling you out. I am one as well. But to not understand that is to become enveloped in these illusions and this bullshit. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I voted blue and I wave a rainbow flag and my gender is a table and I'm woke and there's critical race theory that's solving racism. Like, you literally start to believe all the bullshit.
Yep.
So if you want, maybe that's a good why. If you want a healthy immune system to ideological bullshit, then you should be excited to jump into the Bitcoin rabbit hole and gain the capacity to see through illusions, and therefore the ability to order your life and yourself and build yourself around truth and on truth and how things actually work in the real world. Again, I hesitate to be prescriptive, but I don't know who wouldn't want that. Like, who does not want their life ordered to truth? Who does not want to be informed by what is real? It just seems like kind of a universal thing. So I hope this helps inspire people to look more closely at Bitcoin if they haven't.
Wow, crikey. Listen, what we've done for me was beautiful. I'm hoping the audience have taken something from that. Robert, just stay there for one moment. I love to pull shows together with quotes. I just love finding quotes, and I like to find a quote that might be relevant to Bitcoin. And I found this one. Not everyone is going to get it. Not everyone's going to agree. But what we have to do is stay the course. And I think if we can all listen to narratives, we can all take notice of the mainstream media machine that is out there, but when we start to understand that it's got its own role to play and it is spewing out what it wants to spew out for the masses to soak that up and then carry on with the culture of trusting in governments, etc., and I think Bitcoin gives us an opt out of that. And I love this. In my nearly 6 years in Bitcoin, the amount of people that have, let's use the word, come into Bitcoin, stayed for a little bit, disappeared, they've gone again. They were in it because maybe number go up is what they wanted. I came in for number go up, for goodness sake. But very quickly when you get down the rabbit hole, you realize this is way, way, way bigger than number go up. This is me planting a tree that I'm not going to see grow, but my descendants are, and hopefully are going to live in a better world, a more freer world because of that. So, I say to people, stay the course, learn about this thing, give the time up to learn about Bitcoin. No, I'm not saying you got to, as Robert just said, people. I'm saying it is worth your time, because I always say, this is not a rehearsal for anything. This is life. This is it. Mm-hmm. So when you get to the end of your life, what do you want to look back on? a life full of soap operas or a life full of learning and enriching yourself and empowering others by being involved in what you just said, the greatest invention? Well, you didn't say it, but I know you feel that, and I do. The greatest invention of humanity, I think personally, I don't know how you feel, but I believe it's right up there with the printing press and everything else.
Yeah, someone said that the killer app of the internet is Bitcoin, and I think that pretty well sums it up. And yes, we all have a role to play. That's what we're saying here when we're, and that's what I hope to be participating in, is just representing and embodying the embrace of that reality, that you do have a role to play. You are a participant in history. You can help change it, even if it's just one little tiny corner, right? One little itty bitty dent in the universe you're putting. So be it. God bless it. Make that dent in the universe. Let your audience, or not even audience, just your loved ones, right? Even if you're just signaling to your loved ones and inspiring them to go on their own journey of truth and discovery, I think is worthwhile. And it gets back to that Nietzsche quote that I said to you offline: he who has a why can bear any how.
Yeah.
So, the why of Bitcoin, I don't know, is it justice, freedom, truths, like all these big, highly valued, principled terms that we're relating to this innovation, this breakthrough. That why is so important. So if that why, if we have that why, then we can bear anyhow. We can do anything that we want. We can, shouldn't say that. With a why this big, Bitcoiners can bear anyhow to bring about that reality. That's how I feel about this.
Agreed.
And so it's not just number go up. Number go up does bring everyone in, because the price is the instrument which commands the most attention in the world.
Yep.
But it's, people come to make money, but they stay to remake the money, as I've said before, or change the money, or fix the money, right? We say fix the money, fix the world a lot. And so it's this, number go up brings attention in, but what we don't see, and this is one good way to define economics, is the study of unseen consequences, or of hidden consequences. We see number go up, but what we don't see is that coercion's going down as a result. State power declines as Bitcoin number go up. And as coercion goes down, well, productivity goes up. Wealth creation goes up. The carrying capacity of the planet goes up. Our capacity to satisfy wants and solve problems goes up. Innovation goes up. Freedom, truth, and love go up as a result of Bitcoin succeeding. So how is that not? I mean, it's the biggest why that I can possibly imagine. So I think this is driving and energizing the strong ideological dynamics we're seeing around Bitcoin, right? This counter force of cultural toxicity calling out all the bullshit. It's maybe we've touched the hot stove of truth, basically, and it's coursing through us. And I don't know, some people maybe choose to try and veer off the path and shitcoin, and those people that veer off the path, the counter agent, the toxic cultural force, attacks that, right, and destroys it, or tries to destroy it with truth. So it is powerful stuff on multiple levels. And I hope to just continue to be someone that helps create a dent in the universe that's favorable to the proliferation of Bitcoin.
Well, I'm looking at my clock and I know you've got another appointment. So I'm going to say, for me personally, that was fantastic. I know it was, a conversation down on the normal ones that you have. And we did talk about this offline, but I think that was brilliant, Robert. Thank you. I will say, publicly, you inspire me immensely to learn more and more and dig deeper and deeper. So I can only say thank you for coming on the show. I'm going over here for a moment because normally I say to my guests, where can people find you? People, unless I'm wrong, vida.page /Breedlove22 is all there, Robert, isn't it? Everything is over there. The links to everything, correct?
Yeah, it's basically a link tree, and I'm an advisor, an investor in Vita, and they have like a paid messaging thing, so it's kind of an interesting little startup, Bitcoin based.
Yep.
So yeah, and then that's my Twitter profile that you've got up on the screen. DMs are open.
Go
Let
and
me know
follow
how
him,
I can help.
people. Go and follow Robert. Robert, we're done. I'm going to let you go. Thank you, sir, for coming on. I'll let you shoot yourself out of the green room. I will shoot that DM over to you with that list we were discussing off air afterwards.
Wonderful.
But thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. People, if you enjoyed it, smash the like button and share this so others can find it. Robert, take care, my friend. I'll let you sign yourself out. I'm going to end the show in my way. Great people. I loved that. That was absolutely superb. Please tweet this out. Please share the link with other people so they can find it, so that we can help that Bitcoin adoption, so that we can help more people find Bitcoin. I massively enjoyed that. I hope you guys did. It was a difficult one because what I had to do was have a chat with Robert beforehand around bringing the content down for my audience. Obviously, if you want the depth of what Robert talks about, go and follow him on the What is Money show on YouTube. Go and check out his Sailor series. It was absolutely incredible. I thought there was 10 hours, but he said there was 27 hours of conversations with Michael Saylor. So just mind-blowing. Again, that is it. I'm going to leave you, as I always do, with my social media links. Have a great morning, afternoon, evening, whatever you're doing. Have a fantastic weekend. I'll be back on Monday with a regular show, and I have another guest for you next Wednesday. So once again, thank you for all of your support. I hope you got something from it. Here's my social media links. I'm Brian, the UK Bitcoin Master. This is your Bullish Bitcoin channel interview. I'm gone. Catch you all on Monday.